My name is Supriya and I work as a techno-commercial manager at Genotypic Technology, and I handle corporate accounts and help in their genomics research. I would like to welcome you all to Genotypic Technology's COVID-19 webinar series. I would like to give you a brief of who we are. Genotypic Technology is the first genomic service provider in India providing microarray, next-generation sequencing, and bioinformatics services and solutions to domestic, international pharma, biotech companies, and academia. Genotypic was set up in 1998 and it was incubated in IISc for 2 years, and then Genotypic commenced its business operations in the year 2000. Genotypic is the first genomics company to run its business process on SAP by design, an ISO 9001 certified company with 11,000 square feet genomics facility in Bangalore. Our high throughput facilities enable us to provide microarray, next generation sequencing, bioinformatics services and solutions. Genotypic is constantly striving to enhance its technology platforms and capacity to enable researchers maximize their use in life science research. We are world's first company to be Agilent Technologies certified service provider for 3 major microarray applications and India's first certified service provider for Ion Torrent. Since then, we have validated and incorporated many sequencing platforms like Roche 454, Solid, Illumina, and most recently Nanopore in our workflows, trying to harvest and give the best of all technologies to our clients. Today, we have Dr. Raja, who's going to give us a high-level overview on how genomics is capable of speeding up vaccine research and steer it in the right direction at early stages of development. Dr. Raja is veteran technocrat turned entrepreneur in the genomics sector. Dr. Raja Mugasimangalam is the CEO and founder of Genotypic Technology, India's first genomics company, and Qutilomics, India's first agri-genomics company. He received his master's and PhD in biotechnology as a part of first batch of national entrants conducted by NBTB, which is now DBT, from Madurai Kamaraj University. Following this, Dr. Raja had postdoctoral stints at Weizmann Institute of Science, Israel, Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center, and at Argonne National Lab, USA, where he developed novel methods of DNA sequencing and analysis for the Human Genome Project. Prior to founding Genotypic Technology in 1998, Dr. Raja also worked at Quark Biotech, developing gene expression assays for studying drug toxicity. Dr. Raja is well recognized among scientists in academics, in government and industries alike, and has over 25 peer-reviewed publications in various national and international journals and multiple patents to his credit. Through Genotypic, which celebrates its 22nd anniversary, Dr. Raja continues to enable the application of genomics to basic and applied biological research. Dr. Raja is an elected member of ABLE, Association of Biotech-Led Enterprises of India, and takes care of networking and public relations and works closely with startups and startup incubators. In the genomics fraternity, Dr. Raja is famously known as the Thalaiva of genomics in India. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, Dr. Raja. Over to you.
Thank you, Supriya, and thank you, everybody. I guess all of you are in this situation, right? This has become ubiquitous. We are all wearing masks. We are maybe isolated ourselves in our home. We are having hand wash, we are having this wash, that wash, sanitizer. Some people are wearing gloves. I hope you are not wearing gloves. And there are protective clothing, protective sprays. These are all become ubiquitous. So why is this, and what's our problem, and how are we going to solve this? See, firstly, these pathogens are ubiquitous in our environment. Wherever you see, there is a bacteria, there is a virus, there is a fungi, there are nematodes. Not all of them are infecting us, but given a chance, I think almost everything will infect us because they have to live. We are living in their space. So these are all present everywhere, and it's not new. It's not new. It is everywhere, right? Where even in hospitals, ICUs, wherever you go, infectious diseases are there. And obviously, we have defense mechanisms against it. And finally, what we are having is this SARS-CoV-2, where, let me see, this one, SARS-CoV-2, has made a huge difference in our lives. I think many of youngsters here would have never known about infectious diseases, pandemics, and people living in a life of fear, like we have seen it. Some of the older people have seen. You might have seen people with holes, small little holes on their face and hands. These are people who got infected by pox, smallpox. And people in their 40s, 50s, 60s and all, they were all immunized by using cowpox. Nowadays, it's not being done. You are all, the younger generation is all getting immunized for polio and few other infectious diseases. So now let's move on. What is this SARS-CoV-2? See, this SARS-CoV-2 is a small little virus, RNA virus, and actually a larger amongst the RNA virus, because this is a 30 kilobase genome. Usually it is around 12 kb, like for example, HIV is a 12 kb genome. This is a 30 kb genome, but this is actually very, very small compared to the human genome. So this is the RNA, what is inside is the RNA, right? And this is your famous spike protein, right? And then there is an envelope, lipid, both protein, and then it covers the RNA in a three-dimensional fashion. It's more like a ball which moves around, and this spike is the one which used for binding to the human receptors, epithelial cell receptor, and the virus enters the cell. So finally, the outbreak happened. We were all watching news. It moved from China, it moved to Middle East, it moved to Iran, it moved to Europe, then it moved to US, it came to Kerala, and it came to many, many places in India. And finally, we are having it. There is no question about it. We are having it. So what this SARS-CoV-2 can do, it can actually kill, and it can kill quickly. Everything can happen within a month's time. You get infected. See, here is a person who's getting exposed, is getting exposed to the virus. 1% of the cases who get exposed can get infected. This is the upper respiratory system, early stages of infection. Or 90% of the people who get prolonged exposure, like there is someone in the house who's having the same house. So it is prolonged exposure. Yep, it's day after day after day. Or a car driver in Rajasthan who took some 5 people from Italy who were infected. He was in the same car for 4 or 5 days, taking them all around, and he got it. So 90% of the people will get it if there is prolonged exposure. Less than 1%, like you are going and buying some grocery and coming back, if that person is infected, you have less than 1% chance to get it. That's why you are wearing masks, coming and washing your hands, keeping distance, so that this 1% you are even reducing it to maybe million, 1 in million chance. So that's why this lockout, all these things are government is saying only for that purpose. Then it can go to advanced stages from the epithelial cells on the upper respiratory system. It can enter lungs here. From here to here, you can see the infection is increasing. But one thing good is 98% of these cases who gets infected or gets exposed, then a small percentage gets infected, mild to severe infections. But 98% of the people comes out of this, 98%, 94%. It all depends on the age group and many other factors are there. But typically 98% of the people come out of it and gain immunity. Immunity means it will never infect that person ever again. Whereas 2% of the cases, it goes into the lungs and it goes to all other parts of the body. And before the immunity is developed, immunity will be developing inside, but the virus overwhelms the immunity and the person can die. That's 2% of the cases. So now what is the vaccine for someone who has come not from biology background? I'm just showing one gets exposed, but instead of getting exposed to this virus, you can get exposed to some other virus which cannot cause a severe disease. This is like our cowpox, right? This is like our polio vaccines, where they are all live virus, but they can only make a mild infection. They cannot cause a disease in you, but they will give protection. It will immunize you, it will give the protection. So here it goes. So a very mild disease starts when you use a attenuated virus, which is live. So you get a mild infection. Then 100% of the population, hopefully, maybe there might be small exceptions, develop immunity. So what does this immunity means? This immunity can be a cell-mediated immunity that's called as T-cell immunity, or it can be mediated by B cells or antibody, that is the antibody-based immunity. So this is what you would have heard. No, people are testing for the virus, that is a qRT-PCR, or people are testing you for the antibody, because if you have an antibody means you got infected. Are you still infected? No one knows. But are you resistant to the virus? Probably yes, if you have gone out of the infection. So that is the antibody mediated thing. So this is artificially creating an infection so that people need not go through the virus process, almost go through ICU, because almost 5% of the people who got beyond a mild infection will go through at least hospitalization. And once they go to ICU and comes out there, or even before you escape out of the infection, you become immune. So this is the immune memory. So you're artificially creating this immune memory by way of infecting a non-pathogenic or a non-dangerous version of the virus. So this is the concept of the vaccine, But this is not the only concept. This is an old way of doing it. Either you grow them in some other, or you take a like a cowpox, which cannot infect us, right? And then you do it. Now, going back to this RNA, this virus. So what is this virus? As we discussed, it's an RNA virus. You can see it's not having too many open reading frames. That is, the same reading frame has multiple proteins it can make. And you can see it's small enough. And these are the genes. So I can show in each one of the ORFs, people can select the genes. So these are the genes which direct the protein synthesis and they are the antigens. The proteins are the antigens. So you need not actually get infected by the virus if we can only clone this spike protein or these proteins or the one which is the envelope. Then if you inject that, this is called particulate or antigens, just antigens, right? With captans, if you inject, you can raise antibodies and cellular memory and you can get immunized. So this is one type of vaccination. But if you look at this virus, which is 30 kb, what is it required for a vaccine to be developed? And there is genomics involved in this. That's the theme of today's discussion. So let's go back by a couple of months. See, the Wuhan strain, or Chinese don't want to be called as Wuhan strain, so we are calling it as SARS-CoV-2, and the disease is called the COVID-19 because it originated in December of 2019. Now, in 2020, the virus was sequenced in January. So only after it was sequenced, now we know what it is, what are the proteins. Then different countries started sequencing, right? And the initial time it was used for diagnostic, mainly diagnostic applications. See, you can see here, China ordered 200 Minions. That's a small little sequencer, nanopore sequencer, which can be taken to any lab, any hospital, any field. You can work on the field. In India, we are working with the nanopore, UK nanopore tech. Around 150 Minions are there in India. And I think some 20 of them are used for sequencing COVID. Then you can see it went to many different countries, around 30 countries, 40 countries. Now, many more sequencing reactions have been done, and we know the sequence of the virus in detail in different places. So why it's important? I'm now going back to classical vaccines, how it is done. See, the start point is you have an outbreak. Even before WHO called it as a pandemic, it was rapidly sequenced. Then we know what is this virus is all about, how novel it is. So we know we can't use influenza vaccine, though it is also a respiratory virus, because they are so different, you can't use that. And there is no other coronavirus people have vaccines, which means the vaccine development has to start from scratch. And this is very important. The next stage is sequence the epidemic, which means in the same city, Wuhan and close by, wherever it is epidemic, those regions you sequence, and then you sequence from everywhere. Then you will know what are the major strains of this virus. So this is important to know, because before you want to make a vaccine, you should know how many vaccines I will make. For example, polio is sometimes pentavalent vaccine or a trivalent vaccine, which means there are 5 different strains of polio. And you have to make vaccine for all 5. Why for all 5? If they are very different. So I'm going to show when the same vaccine can work for different strains, when you have to make a new vaccine for that particular strain. Like influenza, every season they make three vaccines, new vaccines, because the strains are so different from the original one, they can escape the immunity. The next point one should know is the host genome. Because as we know, the virus spike proteins goes and binds somewhere. So early stages, people didn't even know that. But people know something. There are some people who are naturally more resistant to the others. That is, we are already seeing people who are super spreaders. They have the virus, but it never goes beyond the upper respiratory tract into the lungs. They're resistant, but they're making enough virus. They don't have symptoms. They can keep spreading it out, right? But there are people who get exposed, but they don't even get even that mild infection to make more virus. It does not happen. So who are they? So this has to happen, right? And there are people, vaccine may not work. For one type of vaccine may not work. They may have to take another type of vaccine. So it's important to study the host genome. And as you know, people are now studying the pathogen genome more, because we should know which gene is very, very important. So you make in virus, there are not too many genes, but you have to know which are the regions which it cannot afford to mutate, right? So that your vaccine is always working for different strains. So it's important to understand the pathogen genome as well as the host genome. So this kind of studies are going around the world. So in India, I think now around 4,000, around 2,500 sequences are already out. Now I'm going back here, this side. So now you can see this word attenuation. Attenuation is nothing but take a virus, knock down few places. I'm going to show how people do that. Knock down few places, and then now this has everything to cause an immune memory, but it does not, it misses the key pieces. It cannot make an infection. See, it's very hard on a little virus to do that. That's why attenuation many times is a natural process. People can also do it by recombinant DNA technology. That also will come. Second is here, cross reactions and cross protection. So one can go and look at are there any coronavirus which created milder disease, killed nobody? Can I use it as a vaccine for this virus? That study is also going on. But you are not seeing them on the newspapers, though people are doing it, because newspapers, most of what you are seeing is some hot news. Something worked, something did not work. That's what you are doing. Then comes the vaccine development, because initially you only know what I should do, what I should inject. Then you have to develop this vaccine, and then you have to see what is happening in the host. Is it responding to the vaccine? What type of adjuvants you have to give, which are all chemicals which will induce non-specific immunity, but it's important for vaccine to work, right? And then, very importantly, once you make a vaccine, though I'm skipping lots of pieces here, but we are going to the last part of vaccine. Once you create a vaccine, before the vaccine goes out, people have to check if the vaccine has reverted back to its old type. So instead of actually saving people from COVID-19, you might be actually infecting people with COVID-19, because you should know what are the difference between the vaccine and the outbreak strain. Are the differences going back, or is it stable? So it's important to check that. So that's why even after one makes a vaccine, it can actually go back in the humans itself, mutate back. That's why it takes time to develop a vaccine. It's not like 2 days, 1 month, 2 months, you'll develop a vaccine. It might take 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. I think for everyone in India to get vaccinated, if this COVID-19 still exists, it might be 2 or 3 years. Until then, wear a mask, do all the protection, but you have to continue living, right? So let's go ahead and see what is there in India. So this is the world. This is slightly 2 weeks old information. There are some 24,000 sequences, and people have in India around 195. Now it has gone close to 1,000. So we know what are the subtypes in India, what are the subtypes elsewhere. So if someone in China is making a vaccine, we'll already know whether it will work for us or not, because if our subtype is different and if the vaccine don't work, we have to redo it. So different technologies were used. So I'll go to the next slide. So the question mark, the biggest question mark is, what is the vaccine strain, right? A vaccine strain is something which contains bases which are actually constant across all the lines. And a vaccine strain also should create only a milder form of infection. It cannot be really pathogenic, right? So it has to cause a very mild disease. So that's almost like an attenuated strain. This epidemiological research is very important, not only to know the spread of the disease, but also to know where my vaccine will work, where it will not work, or I make the vaccine which will take care of all subtypes. Infection biology also has to go hand in hand for making an effective vaccine. So that's why it's important we study the host. And the mutations and the virulence is the most important part to create the vaccine. As I told you, that's the attenuation. You do not want to actually put a gene which is actually the more reason for virulence, right? And then we should also be using qPCR and antibody testing and other methods on the vaccine strain. So see, this is how the graphs, this is called the phylogeny tree. So those who are interested, please go and look at this GSAID website. So it's constantly, every day you can see newer and newer sequences coming in this database. So now it is known that the global population is composed of 6 major subtypes. See, by the way, the SARS-CoV-2 is a type of coronavirus, and now these what I call strains, these are these subtypes we are talking about. So this is the Indian sequence data. Now we have more data, it is being analyzed. So we can see Gujarat, I think this is all came from Iran and somewhere in the Middle East. Some of them came from Italy, some came from US. So all of them we can see different states and how it came. So these are the polymorphisms and what bases they are changing and what amino acids they are changing. This is the key important thing for when someone is developing a vaccine. Because if the base change is not changing the amino acid, you can happily go and make the vaccine with the same thing. But if the amino acids are changing, one should be careful whether there is enough epitopes or antigenic sites which will keep the vaccine active against all the subtypes. So the subtypes can keep on changing. They also have a different class ABC. So I'll go on with what we have to do. So this is the genomics of the host. You use microarrays, you use exome sequencing, all coding genes, or all the genes which are expressed, how much it's expressed before and after infection, before and after immunization. So these are all really important to know, and age. There are many different factors one has to study to make a great vaccine. So what is, where and all so one of the main application of the sequencing efforts going on, I think they will end up sequencing 100,000 genomes, virus genome will be sequenced. I think now itself we are reaching almost 40,000. I think in India itself might be 20,000-30,000 will be sequenced. Only when that is completed, we can actually say where is the vaccine development program going on, is reaching. So this viral evolution, we have to monitor the viral evolution. You don't want to make a vaccine and then say, sorry, boss, the virus has already mutated. So we have to go back and change another vaccine, right? And this host response is also important because You want to make a vaccine which will work for everyone, not of one HLA type, right? Not of one age group. So it's important. So how do you create this? Because I kept saying attenuation. That is, you want to have a milder form of the virus which will infect, but it will not cause the disease. A very, very, very mild infection. See, that is how smallpox, chickenpox, you tell any vaccine or 99% of the vaccines cause a very mild infection. And then you get the immunity. That is a classical attenuation. So the classical attenuation is done by infecting into alternate hosts, maybe cell lines from different animals, or you passage, means you keep on growing and then regrowing and then regrow. In the rabbits, for example, don't try bats, right? Let's do rabbits. So then the virus will slowly lose its capacity to create a infection in human. It will infect, but create a serious, severe disease in human. So finally, you will have a virus with some of the bases mutated. You don't know which one. So you use NGS to sequence these attenuated strains and then say that, look, it has substantial number of changes. It cannot revert back that easily. But I'll use this to actually sequence every batch of strains, or even after immunization, we can collect the virus from the humans, volunteers who got the immunization, and check if they are reverting back. So this attenuation can be done by genetic engineering. Most of the companies now, I don't think anyone is doing this. This is not happening. This is happening. So people are going and intentionally changing the bases, making it less infectious to human. It can maximum grow few cycles on a cell culture, but enough to create a immunity. So this is the major type people are doing. They're knocking off certain genes which will be important for the lethality. So what are the different types of vaccine and where are we now? So quite a few companies are doing what you call as particulate vaccine. That is, they are cloning this, and producing it in different, maybe E. coli, maybe a yeast strain or human cell culture. So they are only producing these proteins and then mix it along with chemicals which induces immunity and then inject to people as an immunization. The one drawback for this is you need lots of it. You need to produce a lot of it. Think about just infecting you with 100 viruses, which anyway grows happily, and you get immunity to injecting you with milligrams of these proteins. But these efforts are going. The next one is heat inactivated cold virus. This is one for quite a few of them, like BCG is a vaccine where it's a heat inactivated, heat killed bacteria is given, or the cell walls you purify from it and give. So this heat inactivated vaccine or some way to kill the virus and give it is also possible, but no one is doing. This is the major method people are doing. That is, take these, put it into adenovirus. See, the adenovirus, there are a lot of vaccine strains, which means they can infect humans a little bit, very mildly, never cause a disease. But once it expresses these SARS-CoV proteins, you can get immunized. So for this, the most important part is now, genomics plays a role is, what is the sequence you're going to put? Is it the Wuhan strain, Indian strain, Iranian line, European line, or something, regions which are constant in all of them? That is the most important question genomics is answering. And then you might have known about DNA vaccines. Here, you inject into muscles with human promoter and human protein synthesis initiation sites, this is called DNA vaccine. This is the fastest one can develop. But the problem here is you have to now inject yourself with a plasmid. E. coli plasmid is going to be injected, and you are going to make not the virus but the viral RNA. It will be expressed in the muscle cells, and that will be secreted out. Also, the muscles, on the muscle cell itself, immunity will be created because they get exposed to the immune system. This people are creating it, but it's very hard to get the DNA vaccine to the market for variety of reasons, because this also don't multiply. But this works. This is better than this. For example, particulate vaccines or heat inactivated vaccines. You might also see the mRNA vaccines. Quite a few companies are creating this. This is also, instead of creating huge amount of proteins, you can infect or inject with only small amount of RNA, which can go and create substantial amount of the proteins. It's like expressing the viral protein, but not the viral infection. So these are the major types of vaccine efforts which are going on. For everywhere, still the same question remains. Who can take it? What is the sequence of the viral genes I'm going to use? That is the most important factor genomics is answering. So here is this. First is population study, because it's not enough that you make a vaccine. It's important that all types of hosts, that's a HLA, right, different races, all of them can take this vaccine safely. That's where you do the vaccine trials, right? So you should know that the people are all of different HLA types. So you can strategize the patients or the volunteers long before you do this study, right? And here, where is this pathogen changing? I told you. What basis it is changing? Is my vaccine, can it handle any change? So we have to constantly sequence everything. That's why I know people are waiting for the second outbreak. After this lockout is over, many people are really cautious. They're saying there might be a second outbreak. If a second outbreak happens, then we should know its sequence, and we should know if the vaccine can work against it, because this is what happened with influenza. They made the first influenza vaccine, and then they found the second outbreak can overcome it because of mutation. Then they made the second one. Then they made the third one. Now, I think there are some 25, 35 major influenza vaccines, independent vaccines are being made. So whether SARS will go to that way, or like polio, we'll have only some 3 or 4 types like pentavalent vaccine. We don't know that. We actually don't know that. So it's important that we have to keep sequencing for that purpose. And then these things I said, these are all on the host side. The genomics of the host has to be studied well enough. So there are many other interesting things. I thank Dr. Saroja for helping me out with these things. How even the microbiota, see, many people said, no, why Indians are more resistant to this virus? Firstly, it's a question whether we are resistant or not, but the way in which it goes, if you see in Iran, Israel, US, Europe, the rate at which we get the infection is much, much lower. The time of exposure and getting even a milder form. And the rate at which people are getting into hospitalization is much, much lower, right? So people do not know what's happening. So many people say it is a BCG vaccination. See, we all take the BCG vaccination. This is against tuberculosis. So they say this is saving us. It's very hard, no? Tuberculosis is a bacteria, whereas this is SARS is a virus. So people think that this microbiota and all is important for the effectiveness of the vaccine, not the where it saves, but how much it can save. So people who are living very, very clean, usually they have very low innate immunity. That's why cold countries, which are obviously cleaner than countries like ours with lots of wind, dust, rain, slush, when these things are there, we'll have in general higher innate immunity. So this microbiota plays a bigger role in the vaccine's effect. So using nanopore or using any NGS sequencing, we can know the microbiota of all the people who are taking the vaccine. So supplementation with probiotics can be one of the ways, because you can't change your microbiota. Only way to change is this, right? Particularly nowadays, we are wearing masks, we are trying to be much, much more cleaner. So then I go to the so there are lots of sequencing programs going on. So you can see this is one of them. Okay. So where these are applied, so there are many things. This laptop or MinIT is something which we have and we supply. There are larger machines are there. These are NextSeq, HiSeq, PacBio sequencer, which are very large machines are there. This is Sanger, which is a good old Sanger sequencing, the gold standard, but you can sequence only small gene. Spike gene itself, you need 3 or 4 reactions to get it correctly. So I'm going back to what I told earlier. How is genomics being used? First is in the start, we rapidly indeed sequence the outbreak. We are sequencing the major strains. In India, we have not done enough, as you might know, but it's happening. We are also involved in this. This is still a question mark. Why some people are naturally resistant, why not others is a question mark. Vaccine development is going on. Attenuation is going on. Different companies are attenuating the vaccines by different ways. People are checking for cross reactions. This also might happen. Already people have done it with all other known viruses, including Ebola. Wherever vaccine programs were there, they checked it. Looks like none of them work. And this is going to happen. The deep sequencing of vaccine batches is going to happen. That's the production lines and production process. Everything is going to be checked. These are going to happen. So for people who are new to NGS, I want to show how it happens before we open the floor for questions. See, this is called the raw data or the image file. This is base called to become fast. Hello? I am on a seminar. So this is, we do base calling and then we get the FASTQ reads. That is, this is the FASTA. You can see AT, GC and all. And then here is the quality score. And this is the FASTA sequence which you see here in the NCBI. This is the most important part. After we bioinformaticians finish the quality and everything and submit, you see only the FASTA reads. And what and all we provide, just 2 slides from Genotypic. You can send, people send host samples like the gut microbiome or the oral microbiome, we can check, or sequencing of the virus we are doing. Different hospitals, different institutions send us. We also provide people with the ready to use SARS-CoV sequencing kit for RT-PCR and then putting it on any sequencer, as a matter of fact. These are all available with us. This is our contribution to the effort which is going worldwide and India-wide. We are also planning to export. Nowadays, it's only provided to scientists in India.